Things are heating up here on Earth, literally. The planet is getting warmer, ice caps are melting, and climate change is spiraling out of control. So instead of cutting down carbon emissions and switching to renewable energy, how about we try something drastic? Let's throw all of Earth's water onto the sun. Yep, every drop from the oceans, rivers, lakes, and even your morning coffee. Maybe that'll finally put a dent in this giant cosmic fireball. Sounds like a foolproof plan, right? Well, let's find out. Meet the sun, the ultimate inferno. Before we get too excited about turning the sun into a giant steam bath, let's take a moment to understand what we're dealing with. The sun isn't just any old fire. It's an unfathomably massive, scorching hot nuclear reactor that's been burning for 4.6 billion years. It's so enormous that 1.3 million Earths could fit inside it. And when it comes to power, the sun releases as much energy as 15 billion atomic bombs per second. That's the equivalent of every explosion in every action movie ever times a billion going off every single second. This isn't your backyard bonfire. It's the cosmic overlord of heat, light, and destruction, dictating the fate of our entire solar system. And just in case you were wondering, the sun isn't merely a flaming ball of fire. It's a churning, seething mass of hydrogen, about 70%, and helium, 28%, with a tiny sprinkle of heavier elements like oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. It stays hot thanks to nuclear fusion, a process where hydrogen atoms smash together to create helium, unleashing energy in the process. Now, with all this in mind, let's proceed with our genius plan, throwing the biggest bucket of water in the universe at it. But before we unleash our inner cosmic firefighter, let's consider a crucial detail. Water is made of hydrogen and oxygen, two elements that don't exactly put out nuclear fusion. In fact, adding more hydrogen is like tossing gasoline on an already raging inferno. So instead of cooling down the sun, we might just be giving it extra fuel to burn even hotter. Step 1. The test run: a single glass of water. Before we drain the Earth dry, let's start small. A single glass of water. Just 250 milliliters of cool, refreshing H2O, gently poured onto the surface of the sun. Surely, that'll make some impact, right? Well, after spending billions on a space mission, successfully launching the Parker Solar Probe, and getting it close to the sun, the moment of truth arrives. A robotic arm extends, tips the glass over, and poof. The water vanishes in an instant, evaporating before it even gets close. The sun doesn't cool down, it just gets slightly heavier from absorbing the hydrogen and oxygen from the water. That's it. No hiss, no dramatic sizzle, just an insignificant increase in mass. The sun, a massive ball of plasma burning at 5,500 degrees Celsius on the surface and millions of degrees at its core, doesn't even flinch. If anything, it might laugh at our tiny offering. The sheer scale of its energy output, about 3.8 by 1026 watts, makes our glass of water seem like a droplet in an ocean of fire. Alright, that didn't go as planned. Time to up the stakes. What if we dumped an entire lake? Step 2. Emptying a lake on the sun. Let's rethink our strategy. Instead of transporting all that water physically, what if we converted it into hydrogen and oxygen gas and sent it in a steady stream toward the sun? Electrolysis could break down the water into its basic components, and we could use a network of solar-powered propulsion systems to direct the gases into space. This method would still take an absurd amount of energy and time. But at least we wouldn't need billions of starships. If we somehow managed to funnel the gases into the sun, would it change anything? Not really. The sun already undergoes nuclear fusion at an unimaginable scale, consuming 600 million tons of hydrogen every second. Adding a few billion tons wouldn't even register as a blip on its cosmic radar. The sun is simply too massive for us to make any meaningful impact. But let's imagine, just for fun, that we could continuously dump entire oceans into it. Over millions of years, this would slightly increase the sun's hydrogen supply, potentially prolonging its lifespan by a fraction of a second. Not exactly groundbreaking. So, in the grand scheme of things, even if we had unlimited resources and technology, Emptying an entire lake into the sun would be nothing more than an extravagant science experiment with no real consequences. Step 3. The giant hose plan. Since rockets aren't cutting it, let's try a different approach. What if we connected a massive hose from Earth to the sun and just pumped water straight into it? This hose would need to be 150 million kilometers long and capable of surviving the 500,000 degrees Celsius heat near the sun. For reference, that's hot enough to vaporize any known material on Earth instantly. But let's say we somehow engineered a heat-resistant hose. The moment we start pumping water into the sun, something bizarre happens. It burns even brighter. Wait, what? Here's the science behind it. Water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen, H2O. When exposed to the sun's extreme heat, water molecules split apart into their basic elements. Hydrogen just so happens to be the exact fuel the sun uses to burn. So instead of cooling down, we just gave the sun extra fuel. Fantastic. At this point, it's clear that no matter how much water we pour, we're only making the problem worse. But we still have one last desperate idea. Step 4. The ultimate experiment: a sun-sized water ball. Imagine the colossal sight of a water ball, as massive as the sun itself, hurtling through space towards our fiery star. This astronomical deluge, containing 1 billion times more water than Earth, would exert an unimaginable gravitational force, potentially crushing itself into a dense sphere before it even reaching the sun. Upon impact, the sun's outer layers would be momentarily disrupted, causing a chaotic burst of steam and plasma. However, rather than extinguishing the sun, the immense influx of hydrogen, its primary fuel, would eventually be absorbed, triggering even more intense nuclear fusion. This could lead to a temporary drop in brightness, but as equilibrium is restored, the sun would burn even hotter and brighter than before. In the worst-case scenario, the sheer mass of the water ball might create a new stellar object within our solar system, possibly a brown dwarf or even a binary system. Instead of defeating the sun, we've essentially supercharged it, ensuring it shines even more powerfully for millions of years. Looks like once again, our plan to put out the sun has spectacularly backfired. The devastating aftermath for Earth. The consequences of draining every drop of water from our planet are beyond catastrophic. Without oceans to absorb heat and regulate temperature, the sun now scorches the land with unrelenting intensity. The absence of water vapor has disrupted weather systems, halting rainfall and leaving the land parched and cracked. With no moisture to suppress them, wildfires have engulfed entire continents, turning forests into ash and filling the air with toxic smoke. The loss of marine life has sent shockwaves through the food chain, leading to widespread starvation and ecosystem collapse. Coastal cities, once bustling with life, are now barren wastelands of dry seabeds and abandoned ruins. As temperatures soar to unbearable levels, the only habitable places left are the icy wastelands of Antarctica or deep underground shelters. The atmosphere, once replenished by Earth's natural water cycle, is now a dust-filled haze, choking any remaining survivors. The disappearance of lakes and rivers has eliminated a critical source of fresh water, leaving billions to perish from dehydration. Without water to sustain plant life, agriculture has failed, dooming humanity to an inevitable struggle for survival. In our desperate attempt to manipulate nature, we have created a lifeless, burning planet, a grim reminder that water is not just a resource, it is the essence of life itself. And there you have it, folks. Turns out throwing all of Earth's water at the sun is about as useful as using a water gun to stop a volcano. So unless you want to live in a toasty, dried-up wasteland, maybe let's stick to solar panels instead. If you enjoyed this wild ride of science and chaos, hit that like and subscribe.